In the name of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Well, good morning to Alice. I hope you can hear me. I've switched off my sound on this thing, so I can't hear me. Interesting to see if you can. Yesterday, what a day. Talk about April Fool's Day. Everything went wrong, but for some reason, so far, it's been quite a nice day. And there's even sunshine pouring in through the window here. So that is a great benefit. And then this evening, Joy of Joys. I'm really looking forward to it already. There's the Divine Liturgy of the Pre-Sanctified Gifts, which has to rank amongst the most beautiful of all services anybody who is Orthodox can go to. And I'm always rather disappointed when people don't go to it. I remember when I was preparing to be received back in 1990, it was one of the services that was, it really, really affected me enormously. This beautiful time spent with the Lord, and the way that the whole service unfolds is just absolutely gorgeous. Well, Miss Connie has been having a lovely mild autumn day where she is, 27 degrees. Well, that in England, Miss Connie, will be a very warm day indeed. We're quite glad because it's sunny and 9 degrees at the moment. So I'm only wearing about 42 layers of clothing as opposed to normal 80 odd. I always feel extremely cold. My hands and my feet are like little icebergs in here. Though indeed, in this room, it is about 16 degrees. So I really shouldn't be complaining. Anyway, there we go. No heating. I've switched the heating off for the summer with the hope that we might have a summer that is less catastrophically terrible than last summer. Anyway, there we are. Good. I'm glad you can hear me. And I hope that Bev is having a nice, decent day where you are, Bev, as well. I think down in the southwest and in southern. What's just happened there? And then, I see what's happened. This camera has fallen off its stand. That's a bit better. Maybe it looked like something was all head. There we go. Today we're going to be reading Acts chapter 23, verses 12 to 22. This passage is quite an interesting one. It takes us from Paul being in Jerusalem to Paul leaving Jerusalem for what we can only think is the last time. Tomorrow, if we're spared, we'll hear about a nighttime escape, not the first or the last that St. Paul will be engaged in. So here we go. Chapter 23, verses 12 to 22. St. Paul, by the way, is in custody in the barracks, probably in the fortress Antonia in Jerusalem. When it was day, some of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. Now there were more than 40 who had formed this conspiracy. They came to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under a great oath that we will eat nothing until we have killed Paul. Now you therefore, together with the council, suggest to the commander that he be brought down to you tomorrow, as though you were going to make further inquiries concerning him. But we are ready to kill him before he comes near." So when Paul's sister's son heard of their ambush, he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions to him and said, "Take this young man to the commander, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the commander and said, "Paul, a prisoner, called me to him and asked me to bring this young man to you. He has something to say to you." Then the commander took him by the hand, went aside, and asked privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask that you bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire more fully about him. But do not yield to them, for more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves by an oath that they will neither eat nor drink until they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for the promise from you." So the commander let the young man depart and commanded him, "Tell no one that you have revealed these things to me." So there we are. I see that Scott is there. Good morning. And also Philip. Good morning. Scott, your bonsai tree has not yet come into leaf, but I look carefully at the local trees, and although quite a number of them are coming into leaf, the oaks seem to be a bit late. So I'm still confident that it will burst into leaf before long. So, verse 12. When it was day, some of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. So the word for oath they use there is anathema. So they have sort of cursed themselves. We will neither eat nor drink until we kill that Paul. This is a curse. And it is a dreadful thing that they have done. As you know, one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not commit murder. And here they are planning to commit murder. And they're doing so, and they're taking an oath before God when they're wanting to do this. So it is a particularly heinous thing that they're doing. So it's an unlawful oath. They should not curse themselves anyway. And the subject of the oath is also unlawful, to murder. It is obviously doubly wrong to make an unlawful oath, and even worse, to carry it out. And in this way, we see a sort of flashback, as it were, to St. John the Forerunner Baptist and to Herod, who of course made an unlawful drunken oath and then compounded his iniquity by carrying that oath out and having John the Forerunner Baptist murdered. Even if the king does it, the king cannot execute anybody unlawfully. If he does, he is a murderer. It's rather like pretty frequently you'll hear the BBC talking about a group of people being executed by unlawful parties, unlawful brigands. They're not executed, they're murdered. Execution is a very particular thing. So there we have this horrific thing beginning to take place in Jerusalem. They compound what they're going to do in a moment. So verse 13. Now there were more than 40 who had formed this conspiracy. Whenever you see the word 40 in the scriptures, you really know that you're talking about a long time. So the Lord was in the wilderness of 40 days and 40 nights. Noah's Ark, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. There were 40 years in the wilderness, and so it goes on. This idea of 40, you don't need to take it absolutely literally and say 40 or more than 40. It's like we might say there are scores of them doing this. So lots of 20s. And it's a sort of, i.e., there are a large number of people who have done this, a very large number, more than 40, very, very large number. Well, actually, if 40 people have made a conspiracy, it is no wonder that St. Paul's nephew had heard about it. The best conspiracy is one that is enacted by only one person and is the brainchild of only one person. Once you get two, you have doubled the chances of the conspiracy getting out amongst the population. And when you have three, you have not trebled it, you've almost certainly doubled it again. So to have more than 40, the likelihood of this coming to the Jewish authorities' ears is very high indeed. Had they wanted to do something that might have worked, then they'd have been better off having just one person. But then what do I know about murdering people? Nothing at all. I'm told that one of my ancestors was one of the gunpowder plot people, nincompoop. And of course, there are a great crowd of people involved in that. So the likelihood of that coming off was pretty well zilch. It nearly did come off, though. And then, of course, they escaped to the country where they were surrounded in a farmhouse somewhere in Leicestershire. And they themselves, if they were lucky, they were killed. If they're unlucky, they were taken, hanged, drawn, and quartered, which was much worse than being shot. His ancestor of mine got himself shot. Nincompoop. Okay, so large number of people, scores of them. Verse 14. This 40 people came to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under great oath that we'll eat nothing until we have killed Paul." So now there's even more people know about this conspiracy. And all these elders and priests and others have gone home and said to their wives, "Oh, that Paul, we've arranged for him to be murdered tomorrow." And the wives will tell each other, "Oh, have you heard what they're going to be doing?" So verse 15. "Now you, therefore, together with the council, suggest to the commander that he be brought down to you tomorrow, as though you were going to make further inquiries concerning him. But we are ready to kill him before he comes near." Now, again, we now have the high priest that St. Paul has already described as a whitewashed wall, a hypocrite, being involved also in the secondary breaking of the commandments. God is very interested indeed in justice, and St. Paul was not going to be subjected to justice by the high priest and others. They wished to tear him apart. Earlier than that, they wished to stone him to death, and throwing dust up into the air. And now the high priest is going to break one of the really important commandments, one of the Decalogue, one of the 10 Commandments, by having St. Paul murdered. So when St. Paul said, "I didn't know that he was the high priest," well, there's a very good reason for that, because his behavior is absolutely not that which you might expect from a high priest. Appalling behavior. So there we go. I'm willing to bet, by the way, that a few days later there weren't 40 conspirators all dying of hunger and having to arrange their funerals, because of course they failed to kill St. Paul, and they anathematized themselves. That means to say they put themselves outside their own religion, so they would have guaranteed themselves hell twice over, of course. And then, of course, they did not actually kill St. Paul. So if they kept their oath, they would neither eat nor drink and therefore die. But I'm willing to bet any amount of money that this 40 plus did not die of hunger and thirst. But call me cynical. So when Paul's sister's son heard of their ambush, he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. So the whole thing is out in the open. Paul's nephew has heard about it, and he does what any good nephew will do. He goes and tells the person who's going to be murdered, "Watch out." One thing I didn't mention was, this sort of inquiry, thorough examination, it says in the Greek. So, maybe the Kiliarch, the commander, would actually concede to that. He's done everything badly so far, so it's unlikely, but anyway, we'll see. So God arranges for St. Paul's nephew to hear about it, and he goes to tell Paul about this forthcoming ambush. Verse 17. Then Paul called one of the centurions to him and said, "Take this young man to the commander, for he has something to tell him." St. Paul is not flapping here. He's not getting all panicky. In fact, he takes charge of the situation, calls over the centurion, quite a high-ranking soldier, and tells him what to do. Now that is quite interesting. So the prisoner is giving instruction and orders to his jailer. And that is a strange thing to do. And we get a clue that this jailer didn't much like this. And in the next couple of verses, verse 18 to 21. So he took him and brought him to the commander and said, "Paul the prisoner called me to him, asked me to bring this young man to you. He has something to say to you." So you notice the way he says, "He didn't tell me to do this, he asked me and I'm doing it." Commander. A commander, the Greek word is kiliarch. And kili means 1,000, arch, in charge of, or the chief, or the most important of 1,000. So this was a man in charge of 1,000 men. That is, he's obviously the commanding officer of this particular fortress. Then the commander took him by the hand, that is the boy, went aside and asked privately, "What is it you have to tell me?" Now, this taking by the hand is taken by the church fathers in a fairly negative way. The church fathers, by and large, think that the commander is hoping for some sort of bribe or ransom that he can quietly squirrel away in his own pocket and then squirrel away St. Paul somewhere else. But he doesn't get a bribe. Instead, the young man tells him what's going to happen. And he, the young man, said, "The Jews have agreed to ask that you bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire more fully about him. But do not yield to them, for more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves by an oath and anathema that they will neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for the promise from you, waiting for the go-ahead from you." So the conspiracy about the ambush is out. So what do we think the commander should now do? Well, in modern times, I would hope that the commander would go away and arrest the 40, and indeed arrest the Sanhedrin, and put in a thorough inquiry into it himself, with witnesses and others, and then imprison and execute those people who are conspirators to murder. That's what one might expect nowadays, for the police to go and do this. He doesn't do that, of course. Have more of this sort of victim blaming going on again. So this is the third or fourth time that this commander has been guilty of this, taking the person who's the victim of the mob and imprisoning him, threatening to beat him, putting him in chains, grabbing him out of the Sanhedrin, again a victim of a mob of the aristocratic and leaders of the country this time round, and again imprisoning him. And now he's going to move him by night somewhere else. He's going to take him away. Now to Antipatris and then on from there to Caesarea. So this is an extraordinary behavior by this rather incompetent manager of people, this Kiliarch, who has taken the easy route in every single case by removing Paul from the conflict, but not keeping him safe, threatening to beat him and so on, and not actually going after the people who are causing the real problem. So he's a rotten person to the core. However, what does he do? So the commander let the young man depart and commanded him, "Tell no one that you have revealed these things to me." The commander gets rid of this youngster, and he's going to act in secret. He's not going to find out what the truth is. We know, and we'll see tomorrow if we are able to do so, that he does indeed take St. Paul away from the situation and sends him off to Caesarea. And he says to this young man, the Greek is quite interesting. It means, it says here in English, "Tell no one you have revealed these things to me." In the Greek, it pretty well says, "Tell nobody you've tipped me off about what is going to happen." So it's rather like a policeman in this country being tipped off by somebody there's going to be a burglary, and then going and arresting the householders. I'm laughing because I remember a time when I lived in Sana'a in Yemen. We were burgled in the night by somebody or other, and the police came. And the police decided that there were 3 people who were guilty of the burglary. The first group, was us, because we had too many nice things in our house and we could only expect to get burgled. The second one was the owner of the property that we were renting, because he had not made it secure enough, built high enough walls around the outside, or put any glass or broken glass or razor wire around the compound. And therefore, he also was to blame for this burglary. The third one was the man who was our night watchman, a man called Ahmed, who was a very poor man, and I have to say an absolutely useless day and night watchman. He lived in a little house by the gate. I liked his son. His son was a very nice lad, about the same age as me at the time. And we used to talk to each other from time to time. I didn't really speak any Arabic. He spoke no English. So there was a language barrier. But from time to time, if nobody else is around, he'd come and play table tennis with me and so on. But yeah, the third one was Ahmed. He was also to blame. So the 3 parties listened to this. The 2 groups of Arabs from the 2 Yemeni groups, so the owner of the house and the night watchman, nodded their heads and said, "Okay, they understood this was the police. The police are probably correct. That's where the blame lay." And only my father managed to point out that perhaps it might be thought that the burglar had some responsibility in all of this too. An attitude that was thoroughly poo-pooed by the police, particularly as it meant they might have to go looking for him. So all 3 parties were fined for having been burgled. Ahmed had no money, so Dad paid his fine as well. And Dad chalked it up to experience. The next day, more wire and other stuff put around the compound. Ahmed was reinstated as our guard and told he needed to keep a better lookout. Dad decided that in future, if we were burgled, we'd not call the police. There we go. Anyway, I have no idea what that was about, but just one of those peculiar things that my exceedingly odd life. Dear, oh dear, Brother John Marie, God bless you and keep you. I hope you're well. Don't worry about being late. And thank you for joining us. Okay, well, I think we can end there. Yesterday, I asked you, of your mercy, to pray for Dorcas. Her waters broke, but as far as I am aware, the baby has not yet been born. She was spending the day at home yesterday doing all sorts of jobs with the hope that might inspire this child to come out. But the previous one took an awful long time as well. So hopefully things are moving there. So please keep her in your prayers. And so that baby arrived and is arriving. And Andreas, that I also asked you to pray for yesterday, died about midday. So please pray for his soul and for a good paradise for him as well. Okay? While we're praying for other people, pray for Andreas' brother, who is also very, very ill and dying, and for his sister, both their sister, Gabriella, who naturally is terribly bereaved today and yesterday. Pray for Nicoletta, for Daniel, for Hilary, who's undergoing yet more chemotherapy at the moment, but she is now halfway through, and it does seem to be having an effect, so thank God for that. For Erin's Joseph, for Dino's Simon, for Christina and for her mother and daughter, for Carol, who is the mother of Thekla, for Andrei, who is dying, for Georgia, who has mental health problems, for Jane, who has pretty severe cancer, for Hector, who asked us to pray for him, for Ash's sister Angie. Okay, so please keep all of those people in your prayers. Alice says, hello, Simon. Good morning. She doesn't say that. I'm saying hello, Simon. Just saw you there. And Ale, God bless you too. Alice says, I recognize the police behavior. It's the same in Egypt. Yep. That I can well imagine. I was quite bowled over by the chaos in Egypt. Dear, oh dear. Anyway, on that note, we shall leave it for today, and God willing, we shall start again tomorrow. So your prayers, God bless you and keep you. Amen.